Hello everyone, I'm Mark Wenner and represent our dive team, Karst Terrain Explorations. It's an honor to present to the 2020 NSS Convention's U.S. Exploration. We hope this moment in time helps to keep the spirit of caving alive, especially through these challenging times. The title of our presentation today, End of the Line. This team and its support system have been in place since 2007. So our body of work today will be considered an update to the many expeditions that have come before. Some of us have been involved in this project from its inception, and others have joined in, helping to support us along the way. After all, the important factor here is the sum total of our achievements. This is a nice overview of the Mammoth Cave system as it continues to evolve. Roppel Cave was connected to Mammoth Cave in 1983, with the connection being the Logsdon River. The Green River runs through the national park and controls the master base level, as it's the main drain for the Mammoth area. Some of the rivers in this cave system, comprising more of this hydrological network, are Hawkins River, Roaring River, Styx, and Echo, to name a few. Mammoth Cave and surrounding cave systems, some of which are not connected to Mammoth, would collectively be considered by most a natural phenomena. As you can see on the right, this sinkhole plain is littered with catch basins, providing a great percentage of the surface water that recharges the underground drainage of this area. On the left, you'll notice the area of Roppel Cave, which is our focus. The upstream section of Logsdon River, which terminates into Sump 1, then transitions through a dry section, then terminates again into Sump 2. The efforts of many dive teams since 1985 have been to run dive line into Sump 2 and surface and walking passage. 2017 was the year, and the team surfaced and walking trunk passage. 34 years of waiting was finally over. Now, a closer look at the area just east of Cave City, and the associated overlay shows the extensive dive trace work which has been performed over the years. Our goal since the mid-80s has been follow that Logsdon River upstream towards Cave City, which is located along the 65 freeway corridor. You know, it's not enough to say that Roppel Cave was exploding in the 70s and 80s. Many good cavers were involved in the history of Roppel Cave's connection to Mammoth. As in any cave project, nobody really feels comfortable taking a large amount of credit for the work, especially in light of how many people are truly involved in the process. Jim Borden was involved in our work 35 years before our dive team ever dove Logsdon River, and he remains engaged in our day-to-day activity. Pat Cambyses, she's another one that's been caving and coordinating with us every step of the way, and will certainly never take the credit that's due. Our thanks to you all. From 1979 to 1980, the Run to the River period, a tanker truck crashed in Cave City and discharged its kerosene spill into a sinkhole affecting Hawkins River and Proctor Cave, more than 6 miles away. That same spill was detected in wet passages of South Arley Way, later named Kumquat Causeway, which is our last muddy crawl approach to Sump 1. In May 1980, cavers entered the historic Roppel entrance and made the difficult trip to Arley Way, donned their wetsuits, and pushed 800 feet through 1 foot of airspace, finding the river flowing from what is now Sump 1. Over a mile was explored and later mapped to discover the survey positioned them 1,500 feet from Mammoth Cave. The historical timeline above details the 9 expeditions that have been mounted in the last 33 years in attempt to break through Sump 2 and into walking passage. There is so much history to tell you in this short presentation. We created a Mammoth cave diving archive a few years ago, and it continues to grow and serve as a repository for field survey books, trip reports, maps, photos, videos, etc. We pull from this archive constantly, connecting the dots to our projects, which at times are moving targets. This is a rather short list of things that need our attention, step by step before work can proceed. In the past, we've made mistakes in our timing, which items needed to come before the other, and gradually worked out a system that became pretty seamless until Mother Nature and the weather gets in our way. We've canceled 2 expeditions in Logsdon River over the past 15 years, and we've canceled a few others in Mammoth due to questionable weather models. Year after year, we hang our hats at the Hamilton Valley Field Station, where we set up operation and proceed to have a pretty good time. I do believe that tent setup in the lower left-hand photo is Barbara Emende from the 2007 expedition. I think that was the year she was cracking her bullwhip. Matt Vinzant had a birthday this trip, so we did our best to roast him good while presenting a slideshow of previous expeditions. Really painful to look at how much younger we were then and not necessarily now. We partied a bit, relaxed, and prepared for the reality of the numerous equipment hauls to the sump the next day. Brian Williams, upper left-hand corner picture. He's one of our founding fathers of the dive team. Notice he's crying as he packs his gear. He was actually up all the previous night driving in from Virginia. It's not the first time I've seen him do that. Everyone arrives at Hamilton Valley when they can, so the first day is a bit of a blur. Setting up a room, getting bored, preparing food while packing. We tend to settle into position and form the following day 2. But the more important aspects of preparation start to weigh on us all. Calibration of survey tools and getting everyone headed in a straight line becomes the priority for the next trip to Sump 1's staging area. We had a good, strong team this past year, which helps make the equipment shuttle less of a burden. I'm brutally aware of the fact that the divers have limited amounts of energy and that they can expend over a short period of time. Camping beyond Sump 2 was not even an option this expedition, but it has been discussed for future trips this deep into the cave. Our objectives for this trip were: put 5 divers through Sump 1, consisting of 2 independent teams. Team 1, comprised of Brian Williams and Joshua Strauss, would concentrate on 4 goals: positioning the radio transmitter on a station near Sump 1, help transport equipment to Sump 2 for the second team's departure with that same transmitter, and with the final task being resurvey the dry passage between Sump 1 and Sump 2. Team 2, consisting of Matt Vinzant, Mike Young, and John Lillestolen, would push through Sump 2 and continue dry passage survey work while pushing leads found during Expedition 2017. All dive gear used on this dive is built to be mission specific. The 40 or 50 cubic foot steel cylinders are small enough to transport and drive the rebreathers, functioning as bailout tanks if something was to go wrong with flooding a rebreather. This same size tank has plenty of air for a 700 feet of underwater passage to traverse to Sump 1. Rebreathers used on this trip were various models made by KISS, compact for the transport. Our thanks go to KISS's owner, Mike Young, for sponsoring this karst terrain operation. Putting more than 3 divers through a sump is a challenge, especially if camping on the other side is in the equation, as was the case with our 2015 trip. The pile of gear grows exponentially, as does the support and logistics to transport it. Less is more, so we balance our approach to our work with all of this in mind. Task loading? That's common. Obvious problem on projects like this, as the skill sets required beyond the dive include caving, climbing, survey, video, and photography. Might as well throw in a few more. Now imagine John here on the left navigating through Sump 1 on this last trip with 900 feet of line rolled up in his hand and managing to stay on the other two lines run through the sump. The main reason we're on the other side of the sump is to document the cave and return with hard data. All survey instruments are run on Hamilton Valley's compass course, and each tool performance is written in the field survey book with the associated FSB number for the project. Getting out of the water soaked, cold, tired, makes staying focused while surveying that much more difficult. Water temperature in Mammoth runs around 54 degrees. It becomes a factor after 8 to 10 hours of push and lost time. We also stay conscious of what it's going to take to pack things up and move back through the sumps to return home to the staging area where Sherpas await. With 5 divers caving 200 feet below, our surface team lathered up with bug spray and suntan lotion, striking out with 2 radios. Thanks to our cave diver Andy Pitkin and his Florida team, Karst Underwater Research, we had the tried and tested radio equipment we needed, along with Andy's experience and oversight to successfully find our survey locations. September can be a really tough time of year. Seed ticks, poison ivy, and it's typically deer hunting season, so our timing has to be spot on. Some years we have to use the added protection of orange hunter's clothing, and it's usually more difficult to secure permissions from the various property owners. Dave Weller assumes and takes charge of the required landowner relationships each expedition. Being a local property owner himself, and everyone seems a bit anxious to determine where the cave is positioned under their properties. The first radio locate was convenient to find. Positioned at the edge of a large and level farmer's field, we simply drove close, hiked through 5-foot-tall dried crops with the pollen just billowing over the top of us. We used 2 GPS tools to grab our position and then move on, keeping tempo with the schedule we've set up with the dive team. It's a 1-hour window with the transmitter on, allowing the surface team that time to search and locate it. In a perfect world, the loop radio will penetrate deeper than a core radio system. More power can be run through the coil than a core, so there's less heat built up, which helps keep the tuning frequencies more stable. Also important is the stability of the geology you're using, as the signal passing through breakdown, for example, can be less accurate than penetrating solid limestone. The 2 images above represent a coil positioned on a station, transmitting a magnetic field. Directly over the center of the target, which is ground zero, the bands of our magnetic force will be vertical. In simple terms, the position of the receiver we are holding on the surface allows us to identify a magnetic null, or the smallest amount of signal in our headset, over the target area. We are also conscious of not wearing magnetically prone things like cell phones or watches. Here we are hovering over the radio location, waiting for the transmitter to be turned on. The phone or pad app, Topo Maps, works exceptionally well for following the topography while comparing its readout to the USG overlay and service plots indicated on our paperwork as radio locates. The important thing to remember in pushing beyond multiple sumps and dive gear is the error that can be introduced into the survey. This is due to the fact most dive gear that we're wearing is extremely magnetic. Matt used a digital survey tool through both sumps to reduce some of this error factor, but the survey ties still drift. Add to that errors in our USGS overlay, previous survey work using other tools. All of this makes radio location that much more important. A good point of reference identifying the cave survey position from above. Matt and Mike added 2,500 feet of additional passage to the map this past trip, cave continuing to go, but not peacefully. There's organic surface intrusion everywhere, and cave species abound in the nutrients. This area is located below a huge sinkhole, so our topside search includes any karst feature which might signal a potential entrance and/or any air blowing. A special message from one of our surface support members and caver, Charlie Bob Buchanan. I deferred to Charlie this year as expedition leader trainee and feel this is what we need, more young people like him coming up in the caving ranks. This is the point in the project where the work on the other side is terminated, and the guys make their way back through both sumps, unharmed. Here you can see some of the original dive lines run by Ron Simmons, Wes Giles, and Roberta Swicegood in 1984 and 1985. We've run another safety line since in 2013, but the original lines are still intact, sometimes used, but some are buried in sediment. Here we are, running out of time on the expedition and in this presentation. There's not much more I can say that most of you don't already know. We pull the plug, and then we pull the gear. Everyone's safely out of the cave in one piece, and returning those property keys to Dave Weller is one more step. Thanks, Dave Weller. Similar to other National Park project models, once back at Hamilton Valley, all survey data, photos, videos, trip reports, everything's downloaded to a central computer disk drive. This is then uploaded to our server, providing everyone with access to it all. Most project cavers already know it takes more time to comb through the data from a project, organize, discuss, and isolate mistakes than the entire expedition consumes. Being detail-oriented through the entire process will save so much time and energy down the road. It's worth the investment. We would like to thank Kevin Downs for the investment that he's made in the map that we have to date. 6,000 feet of survey, doesn't sound like much, but the numbers really don't tell the endless story. This too will be continued. We'd like to take a moment to thank all of you for spending some time with us. We'd especially like to thank our sponsors, support, and the long list of those not mentioned in this presentation. Safe caving, everyone, and here's to exploration.